Hello and welcome to Utopia News, a warcast for World of Legends. Today I'm joined with my guests. Today are CHEETZY, Smiles, Persian Cat, and SAPTZ. We're going to be looking at Outer Protection Wars and what's going on this age with regards to those. So let's get this discussion started. Welcome to the discussion, everybody.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for
Hello,
joining me
hello.
today, guys. Now, for everybody out there, outer protection wars are, a pretty interesting subject. A lot of people don't care about them. Some people say it makes your entire age. Um, what do you guys think about that statement? Do you think outer protection wars are really that important, or is it just an easy way to jump into that first ceasefire quickly?
I think it
Personally, after
helps
you.
your steamroll off a bit if it sets up right. You get the right science, you get the right honor, you get the right land in the right places. It can do really well for you. But I think a lot of wars just roll the dice, split your kingdom up, and then after you get some elites, that war two, war three is where the real action starts.
Yeah, I personally find that War One will set up which one of your thief mages is going to get crushed to the remainder of war because you can't have your thief mages literally be the top 5 or 6 provinces. You're going to have one or two attackers in there, and whichever thief mage ends up screwed a little bit that first out of protection war, they're the one that's going to be targeted every age and chained down. So I find that you kind of end up steamrolling a thief mage being either going to have a good age or going to struggle all age.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it really depends on what the enemy is gunning, like what they're actually trying to do in these situations. Because, I mean, I've seen a lot of out of protection wars where I swear that everyone's just like, oh, max gain, we'll just max gain, we can't lose that way. And of course, if the enemy has any kind of strategy at all, that, pertains to disabling your provinces, I mean, it's, with such low numbers you think it's a little bit harder to do, but in reality, it's actually pretty easy to disable a province that's already at 300 or 400 acres, especially with minimal resources, because you don't really have that much troops to begin with. One of the things I thought was kind of concerning, at least in my eyes, was I was pulling an awful lot of sots on undeads and orcs and dryads, and I was seeing ratios of 1 to 4 or even 1 to 5 offense to defense, which is kind of just like why did you pick this setup? Pure Dryad, pure Orc, pure Undead, but like 30k defense on 5k offense, and they're not growing. I'm kind of confused as to what these provinces are.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, it comes down to not just the ability, like the player styles of the kingdom. So, for example, we don't particularly, or we didn't look for OAP wars in screw ups. We just kind of did a potluck, like everyone's saying, would make certain amounts of hits into many different kingdoms and leave it open to the fact that we could get triple or quad hostile, and then obviously take it from there. You don't particularly sort of dip and pick. You just either fortunately either get an OAP war at the start and then hopefully win and get that little bit of science. But to be fair, to chain provinces sort of straight off the bat, it's just pointless, really. You've just got to try and get out with a win any way possible.
Yeah, and so I mean, like what is the real goal here? Like, do you leverage your TM power? Do you just go everyone attackers? Like, is there a benefit to having some cows in that regard? Like with, in terms of having a TM, like a pure TM, let's
Yeah,
say.
I mean, we didn't really run pure TMs per se in the last 2 ages. We ran pretty much hybrids, which some people like, some people don't like. For early wars in particular, the lack of runes and the damage that it sort of gives you for your ability to do do ops and spells on them, it's probably not worth it potentially in the long run. You're probably better off saving your runes for the ritual. Or any of your GC, like dragons and stuff like that. It's just OAP is just about sort of rolling out with the win on the other side and making sure you try to make your hits effectively. Because obviously chaining is just pretty much non-existent.
Absolutely. And when it comes to like let's say chains for instance, I mean, I found that I had the best success doing what I like to call like a micro chain. So, you pick like a handful of targets, let's say 6 or 7, and you assign 2 or 3 attackers to each one. They will march their armies, focusing on those ones. Of course, you're looking for people who aren't pulling in much acres or maybe made a longer, plus time hit. You can really take advantage of situations like that. But I think in Out of Protection Wars, it really comes down to the setup, whether you can push that dragon out, whether you can get your ritual ready for, when the war starts. So I think those are some things that can really have an impact on the war. I mean, if you have a ritual and a dragon versus someone who has no ritual, no dragon, I mean, that's a huge bonus for you at the beginning.
I think it definitely is. I mean, I know obviously people have been complaining about the dragons this age because it's is it 50% cost this age, um, and obviously we were quite fond of a dragon on our side. Um, so I don't know how it might work differently with the mechanics this age, whether it's worth it because I've heard a few people say that people are getting sort of 2 and 3 dragons off during the OAP war, but obviously that is it worth slaying them or is it worth just tanking the dragon that they get? But I'd be quite interested to see how that works as we get further down the line when you start looking at the OAP wars that are currently going on and what people's opinions are on that.
The map suggests that for an outer protection war, you need to tank the first dragon. Because if you don't tank the first dragon, you're probably going to commit to slay 3 or 4 of them, and at this point, a dragon is a lot cheaper than the troops that you use to slay them. So ideally, you should be tanking the dragon this age.
Yeah, I've heard of as many as 9 or 10 dragons in an out of protection war, and that's just I can't imagine having slayed 5 dragons, for example, when the total drop in military is only going to be at most 2 or 3 if you're say running Emerald or Ruby.
Yeah, and I
So,
mean, you want to have that extra time to disable whatever economy they have, in terms of tanking that first dragon, because if you just go back to back slaying, you haven't done any work to take out that economy to stop that dragon machine from continually pushing out those dragons, right? So, I mean, slaying that first dragon can almost be a trap.
It is actually a trap this age because dragons are way too cheap right now, especially out of protection. There are many people who went a bit slay happy, and I think it's pretty safe to say that they all lost their wars.
Yeah, and that's so funny. I'm just reading the comments here. Apparently, trees. I noticed trees went to war, did an out of protection war, and they lost terribly. But I think I'm going to be doing a quick review of that later. That's just a funny comment from Cell in the Muga forums there. But anyway, guys. So what do you think about arranged wars? I mean, we know what you think about arranged wars, but what about out of protection? Is it beneficial? Does it just make it easier? Are they easy to get or are they just as hard to get?
I think the longer you wait, usually the harder it is to get an arranged war. Even out of protection, pretty quickly, people sort of sort themselves out into tiers. You don't have to make a single hit to end up #1 net worth, just if you're sitting there robbing gold and training. So I think arranging and protection is usually a bit more reliable if you want to jump right in.
Or you can do what I do, just wave smiles, you press the button.
I press buttons.
When I was desperate for when I was desperate for a war a couple of ages ago, I just looked at who's my neighbor and I said, "Hey, Smiles is my neighbor. I'm gonna wave him and he's definitely gonna push the button."
Yeah, that went well for you. Not so much for me.
That was calculated.
Now, so we talked about out of protection wars, like arranged wars. What do you do if you can't find a war? Is there a specific setup? Is there something you can look forward to going forward, or are you just kind of stuck in a bit of a rut until you get that first war?
Sit on unis. That's my only advice. Just
Yeah.
sit on unis.
Yeah.
And guilds.
No, not guilds. Unis.
I personally run like 25% unis, 20% guilds out of protection if I don't think I'm going to get war right away.
Yeah, you like 20% just for cast and ritual and durations and saving runes and stuff. But
Yep.
you say run guilds, people probably assume you mean more than 20.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Fair enough.
And I mean, keep in mind, you don't have too much money to play around with unless you are robbing people or you find some good plunders. So not too many people are going to be doing entire build flips. However, some races do have some advantages in terms of discounted build or faster build times. So, you know, they have a little bit better chance to bring their economy back or even make that switch and keep training as they're going. Because, I mean, out of protection, most people don't leave with more than 50% draft. And some people aren't even fully populated yet. Because if you forget to cast that Love and Peace or you fail it too many times, you know, you're a couple steps behind compared to the rest of your kingdom that didn't fail those first few casts.
Yeah, I wonder what the spread is on True Bloods versus mixed breeds as age on the outer protection success. Wonder if we'll be able to quantify that at all.
Well, I am keeping track of them, like all the wars daily, or at least try my best to, so we can use those charts to kind of look at which kingdoms have won, who they faced, and whether they were pure or half-bloods. I mean, we can do a little chart later on to see, you know, which kingdoms had the most success. And I mean, it'll be evident at the end when the rankings are posted as well. You know, it'll be pretty easy to just go through and look at who's pure blood and half-blood. Certainly some more intel might be needed because, you know, it's not like we just have everything available to us right away just by looking at the target finder or the, you know, the kingdom pages without intel. I haven't actually checked though, but does the target finder indicate the race, both the races, or does it just give the primary race? I never actually
Just the
got to
primary
look at
race, I'm
that.
pretty sure.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, that would make sense because it never displayed the personalities before anyway. So yeah, so definitely some more intel is needed to find out you know, who these kingdoms are, but you know, it won't take too much effort to get that intel. I already have a ton of intel from the server, so that's only going to increase as time goes on. Now, what, you know, how do you leave out of protection in preparation for war? Like, what's everybody's best practices here?
Don't go AFK. Make sure everyone's on.
And in terms of like numbers, like military numbers and builds, I mean, I'm heavily favored of going like an heavy, almost suicide, you know, offense strat combined with universities, combined with high guilds and universities. Like, you know, I left protection with about 40+% universities and a ton of guilds. So, I mean, then again, I am playing pure human, so, you know, my situation is a little bit different. I also have a very low BE at the moment, so that's the reason for my extremely high universities.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm not playing this age, but generally, as a rule of thumb, about 1 to 4 defense, offense, maybe half a TPA, depending on what you're on, and like you say, keeping them guilds and unis in, but sort of maybe phasing your way into sort of a build if you know you're definitely going to get a war, and having them unis in case you don't, so you can keep pumping away. And usually after the first few days, you can tell. But I'm a bit like SAPTZ really when he said earlier about if he's next to Smiles, he'd just wave anyways. That's generally as a rule of thumb how we would play, just wave away and hope someone presses the button and gives you that war. But generally, I do prefer good old suicidal OEP strat because, like you're saying, if you're sitting on four defense to 1 offense, what's the point really? Even if you're a pure TM, you're probably better off hitting in the first war. Because at least then, if the other kingdom does decide to chain you, you've got some offense to go back with than sitting on pure defense and not really having nothing and getting chained down. And you probably haven't got the runes to do land lust or anything like that. So suicidal strat is definitely the way forward for me.
Yeah, typically for me, I aim to have 10k defense. That's just, even this age, that's kind of that. I'm not going to be 4-tapped by their whole kingdom, but as soon as they hit me 5 or 6 times, now I am. But it just at least provides that little tiny bit of protection and gives me enough defense that I don't feel like I'm being hit with pure spare off.
Basically, what you want is actually a 2-to-1 ratio. That appears to be the golden ratio from what I've experienced. You want enough offense that you can hit reasonably, maybe 3 times, 4 times, but you don't want enough. But you want enough defense to avoid getting quad tapped.
Yeah, and I mean with such high elite numbers and such high conversions, especially in war, that's definitely something you have to be more mindful of this age because I think the numbers have been so low for quite some time now that this might be a little bit of a shock to some people. Like some of the nice OS strats I've seen are in fact like 4-to-1. They got about 40k offense to 10k defense, and I have to say that is kind of where I stick around too. In terms of defense, about 10 to 15,000 roughly. Kind of at the smaller size right now, and I'm pushing over 40k offense. So in most cases, I'm target finding right now, making about 3 or 4 marches. I'm doing about 2 learns or 3 learns and a land grab as well. I'm just slowly growing, keeping my economy going, keeping drafting, just so I can keep increasing my troop numbers, so I can keep learning as many targets as possible. Again, playing human, I'm really stacking science this age. So
How are you finding your gains on them learns this
uh,
early?
So far, actually, like when we first left, as I said in our pre-chat discussion, I was finding a lot of provinces had already been hit, sometimes 2 or 3 times. So there was really tough finding, those targets to hit that were low enough to make it worth my while. To be honest, right off the bat, they were absolutely terrible. I had to pull probably about 50 sots and rely on some intel from my kingdom, who to avoid. One thing I noticed is players aren't allocating science. A lot of them don't even have universities. Some people, I found a couple players who had been, with the game since the age started, and they only had about 10k books or less, which is just mind-boggling to me. They're literally doing zero science. So that was an issue. But then one thing I noticed that hurt so far, has been hurting me so far, was the reduction of gains from unallocated books, and then the increased allocated science books over current values that you get from the allocated ones. Like as I said, a lot of people have not been allocating their science, which I'm trying to figure out what they're up to, or maybe they're just new to the game and they don't know how to use the science tab. Whatever the case may be, the targets are small. However, I will say I have gotten some great learns already. Like on my 2 armies that I marched earlier, I got about a total of 15k books. I'm getting about 5 to 10k books per march, anywhere from 9k offense to 20k plus offense. So I'm kind of happy with it, although I think it just takes a bit of adjustment because there used to be a lot more learn targets out there because of the inactives or people who only log in once a day and they have those stockpiles of books. It still makes a difference though. Like if you find a target that has about 30 to 40k unallocated books, you're getting about 7 to 8k books out of that without plussing time. And even with GBP out of war, I hit the same target twice, and I still got about 12k books total out of it. And I think he only had about 35k books total, and they were all unallocated. So um, I'm kind of happy with the gains so far from learns. I think it'll be a lot different though once we get to the middle of the age.
Oh yeah, interesting.
So I guess in summation there, it this change really hasn't affected me too much. I can still very easily work around this learn mechanic change. Now, let's see, in terms of, what kind of strategies do you guys prefer for out of protection wars? I mean, we talked a little bit before about how chains are kind of, ineffective to some degree. Dragons and rituals are very important. Would you say that a kingdom setup is determined by the out of protection war going forward? Or, it doesn't matter because with a 4-day ceasefire, you could explore and have your TMs back at the top in no time. Is there a benefit to cowing your TMs or supposedly trying to cow your TMs at the top of an out of protection war?
I think your fairies, it naturally happens because of that elite convert. So I think this age, unless they're getting hit a lot and they're losing all those elites, assuming they went a high O spec start, they're just going to end up with a bunch of defense. And then you're left with the question, do I one time this fairy or do I 4 times these attackers? So I think everyone's fairies are going to hit the top of their land this way.
I think that would be the case, for the ones that do go pure O spec or mostly O spec because of that conversion. They'll really stack up defense quickly with their elites. I think the ones that go heavy D specs, they're going to be in for a bit of rough water.
I think anyone who wave or maybe wave more than once out of protection, or even if they just only hit with their fairies out of protection before they ever got their war, defense could easily go up like 10,000 to hit from what I've seen so far. Like you're getting more than double the specs on those elite values. You're getting a lot of defense really fast.
The vast majority of kingdoms, though, did not wave. It only took 1-2 waves to see somebody at like that 12-13k acres to be the top size in the game. So I think when it comes to that, we're kind of going to end up looking at how much were fairies actually able to convert in war. And given that there's double conversions in war, I would not be surprised to have seen a fairy just instantly go into single taps.
Yeah, and I mean, is there a benefit to a slow moving army versus a fast moving army in an out of protection war? I mean, you have to be able to keep up with the training, and doing 3-4 marches every time can seriously deplete your troops if you're hitting different targets. Um, you know, it can be tough decisions sometimes, but at the same time, when you are converting for defensive elites, maybe that single big hit against a target with a big at-home army might be your best shot. Now I've seen, I've had a lot of experience in the past with, as I said, I like to call it micro chaining, where you focus on disabling provinces. I mean, you're not trying to kill the province completely, whereas like a deep chain, so let's say the average kingdom size or province size is about 1,200 acres, a deep chain, let's say, takes you below 200 or even into the, low, might even take you below 100 depending on how aggressive the kingdom strategy is. But that's totally unnecessary in an out of protection war. Really, all you want to do is stop them from paying their wages, stop them from drafting. Really, it's just taking enough off the top to stop them from growing, but also to nerf their economy. So they can't pay for those dragons, they can't pay for troops, they can't draft. That's why gnomes, I think, would be a tough one out of protection because they get so many credits. They could put all that econ towards either helping out other players, building, of course, or pumping out those dragons. Again, I'm kind of upset that we're not seeing more gnomes rather in the world. I think they had a lot of hidden powers here that people just are not used to playing with. But those credits are certainly very, very useful.
Gnomes
Same
are
as
the
any war.
strongest
You win with
teams,
eco.
really. Gnomes really are the strongest teams because sabotage damage is insanely powerful.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are going to be missing out on that as the age goes in, and when they do face those gnome kingdoms that have a few or a couple of gnome halfers, they're really going to be upset once they start seeing those ops come through on their news page. And even thinking like, man, I wish we had a couple of those little gnome guys. That would have been so useful. Okay, so let's try something here. I'm gonna try a quick screen share, and we're gonna try and go over, just look at a couple of the wars that are currently in progress as soon as I figure out how to do this. Okay, here we go. Actually, we're gonna go just one tab, and we're gonna look at, oh, you know what, I can't do it that way. I'm gonna have to share the entire window. Okay, here we go. So let's just take a quick look at the target finder here. Okay. So I just basically all I did was I arranged everything by duration here, and I kind of just looked at all the wars at the top. This is what I do when I was doing the news. You know, I basically just open up every single war, go to the net worth screen, and you know, kind of see where everybody was at. Let's take a look at this first one here. Is this actually the first war that happened? No, I believe it would be this one here. So Drunken Party versus PM for War. You know, this is just the Kingdom net worth here. I mean, you can obviously tell by the net worth at the end that PM for War clearly won this war. You'll see a sharp increase in net worth generally once the enemy withdraws. So that's how you can kind of tell just by looking at the net worth chart. However, I mean, you know, looking at this war, they were pretty on pretty even terms going into it. I'm not sure what happened at the end, but clearly, you know, the one side got the upper hand because if you look at the way the net worth was moving back and forth, they were doing a pretty good job of controlling each other until about that last wave there, where Drunken Party just wasn't able to pull, I guess, their attack target down low enough to make a difference. And of course, that's where PM for War gained traction. And of course, you know, probably within, you know, about 5 or 6 hours, maybe a little bit longer, Drunken Party realized that, you know, they had lost their position in the war and withdrew. However, you know, they withdrew at a good time because, you know, they just dipped below that net worth line. They were trying to maintain the entire war. Um, so at the end of the day, you know, they did a very good job maintaining their kingdom overall. These are the kind of close wars that I think everybody wants to have. Um, you know, when you have too much of a one-sided war, it kind of takes away some of the fun. You know, especially if you're just beating down on an opponent that refuses to withdraw. I mean, of course, there are times when you know, it's totally within their right to keep the war going because there's a lot of intel that we don't necessarily see just looking at the target finder here. Um, let's look at another one. So the next war out of protection, this one looks like it was a little bit more one-sided. We got Unnamed Kingdom versus Warhorse's Stable Party. Definitely sounds like these guys were having a party for sure. Looking at this, every wave you can see here, except for the second last one, it doesn't seem like Unnamed Kingdom was really able to do enough damage to these guys to get anything, you know, done in terms of winning this war. Every wave you can see them losing net worth. So clearly the tactics Warhorses was using here was good enough that you know, whoever they were attacking, they did plenty of damage. You can kind of look at the change is still visible. However, the, you know, Warhorses side is a little bit muddled up because they gained when they won the war. So it's not the best to look at that side of the war winner. But you can still kind of see the lasting damage that was done to the net worth of the enemy here. So this war lasted about 60 hours, I think. Let's go on to the next one here. Here's a nice quick one. Wishmasters generally always takes out of protection wars. I mean, I've seen them take crazy wars that most people would back away from. And if you look here, you can see that they actually went in with less provinces. Of course, they did lose this war, but it looks like it was a pretty tight war. I mean, their strategy must have been pretty solid going up into the first couple of waves here, but then it kind of just peters off at the end. Again, it's something, you know, something's happening at the end of the war here after min time. It's probably, you know, their more active provinces are getting disabled, so it's making it harder for them to maintain that net worth line. Because once you start losing your best players' provinces, obviously that's where things start to break down. So if an enemy can identify your best players ahead of time, you know, that's again part of the outer protection war. So going on to the next one here, Empyreans versus Predators, or Predators versus Warriors. Um, I mean, this is a pretty one-sided war. This is kind of what I was talking about before. I mean, Empyreans, they like to go to war. Generally, they don't win too many wars, but good on them for always wanting to go to war. But you can see here, maybe they had a chance on the first wave, but that quickly deteriorated after every subsequent wave. You can see them gaining net worth, kind of in this general area here and again here. And, something again happened here where Empyreans was losing net worth until the end of the war. Let's move on to the next one. Another one-sided war weekend. Thanks for the war. War agreed. I mean, it's pretty obvious here. We see some close wave here, but then it quickly peters off. Um, so this, in my, from what I can tell, war agreed here on the blue line was probably just max gaining, and the red line, they're taking out targets, except for at the very beginning here. I think war agreed may have taken out one of their provinces slightly, but then on all subsequent waves, they weren't really able to do any damage at all to this kingdom. This war actually, I believe, is still going on, but I think it should probably end soon. Next war, oh, this is a nice close one. Pirates versus Varg Packet. I mean, looking at these two kingdoms, I can pretty much tell you who Varg Packet is. These guys usually go to war with pirates out of protection almost every age. They always have very close wars generally. They're actually evenly matched this time. Normally one side goes in with less provinces, but it looks like Varg Packet is actually starting to take away from pirates there. So, if I had to call this, I'd probably say blue was going to take this out of protection war. Here's another one, Zootopia versus Knights Hospitaller. Again, two kingdoms that love taking wars regardless of the situation. We've got a nice tight waves here. It looks like they're doing a great job controlling each other. But of course, at the end here, someone lost momentum, or Knights Hospitallers clearly lost some momentum and ended up giving in to Zootopia. So, I mean, it was a nice tight war, however, otherwise. And again, I like what I'm seeing here, these even numbers of provinces. Those are always nicer wars. Here's another core versus the woods. You see, I know Sel was complaining that people were going to see how bad his kingdom actually was, or something like that. I mean, this could have gone much worse for them. They were able to stay above that net worth line. Right here is kind of what I'm referring to. Just below them, they never really dipped below that. So good on them for maintaining their net worth and not just letting themselves get farmed out completely. But you can see here, there's almost no, like, both sides must have been best gaining here. There's no real dip in anybody's net worth except for the very end here. So I mean, this is, probably one Woods was just not prepared for, and they are a brand new kingdom, so it's no surprise that they lost to the core, because the core is actually, they do war a lot, so it's not like they're new to the scene. RCC versus I was fired because, again, a nice even war. Looking at the numbers and looking at the waves again, it's kind of similar to Tree's war. We're starting off here very even, and then the first wave, fired is losing a province probably, but then they bounce back. But as you see, RCC doesn't seem to be losing, almost zero net worth at all throughout the entire war. So, if anything, they're gaining net worth. So I'm not sure what's going on there, or what was fired is not doing, but they're definitely, kind of just letting this war go to the enemy. Um, but obviously, when you do have a strategy from the beginning, as you can see here, they were taken down just low enough to be below the net worth of the other kingdom, and they were never able to pull back. Just slowly bleeding over time. On to the next one, War 4-5 agreed versus Unnamed Kingdom, War agreed 4-4. Looks like, again, a very nice tight open. However, after each successive wave, you can see here, blue is overtaking. So again, it seems like red is probably max gaining or best gaining, and then blue is actually taking provinces out here. So they are sustaining a bit of damage because some of their provinces probably are hitting some form of chain target for lower gains. but also, something we don't get to see on this end is what does everyone's defense look like? What does everyone's offense look like? In some of these instances, it could just be that they are both best, they're max gaining, but blue is marching 3 or 4 generals per province, whereas red is only marching 1 or 2 generals per province, and that can easily lose you the war as well when the enemy is out hitting you. I believe that happened to me last stage with Divinity. We got into one of those situations where they were quad tapping and we were only doing single or double hits, and that basically lost us that out of protection war. Going on to the next one, classic video games between Always War. You see Always War had a little bit of a head up here going into the war. But again, it seems like whatever classic video games was doing was a good job in terms of disabling those red provinces. You can see here on every war, there's a little dip in net worth, little dip in net worth. I can guarantee you that is a province being taken out. And you can tell because, the enemy is just continuing to grow unstopped. Getting close to the end here. Oh, here we go. StarCraft versus this is a crab. This is a nice looking lines on this war. Definitely StarCraft did a good job trying to bring them down, but it looks like they just weren't able to do that because I like to look at divergences here in the line, the net worth lines. So like this is their wave, this is their wave. This is their wave happening right here, and again right here. There's only a few convergence points here at the end, or this war's still going. So the last couple of waves, they were able to do some damage. It seems like maybe red was dropping the ball a little bit here. I still think this one is probably anybody's war. StarCraft is not usually one to give up easily, so I'd be interested to see in how this war goes forward. Let's see if I can drop over to a land without getting kicked out. Yeah, okay, good. Wow, look at that land go. So there are some huge land swings going on here. So there's definitely some decent chains going on. It's going to come down to econ control at this point. However, it looks like they just had a wave. So it looks like, the same kind of pattern is occurring here. However, it looks like, these increases and decreases in net worth are getting a little bit smaller. As you can see, they're getting a little bit tighter together, except for right here. There seems to be a long gap here. Maybe everybody slept in, or maybe someone plus time on this one here, because some of these other waves are pretty tight together. A little bit less, a little bit more time has passed on this wave here, or they're just marching extra armies. It's hard to say without pulling more intel. Now going on to the next one, we're looking at metallic. Everybody knows who these guys are. If it's the guys I think they are, yeah, it is. Golden Eyelashes, the Monarch. So this is the Metallic crew versus Recruiting Few. Metallic obviously took this war a few provinces down, and you can see that in the war itself. I mean, it looks like they're trying to do some kind of chain action here, but that's quickly breaking. Yeah, okay, good. Wow, look at that land go. So there are some huge land swings going on here. So there's definitely some decent chains going on. It's going to come down to econ control at this point. However, it looks like they just had a wave. So it looks like, the same kind of pattern is occurring here. However, it looks like, these increases and decreases in net worth are getting a little bit smaller. As you can see, they're getting a little bit tighter together, except for right here. There seems to be a long gap here. Maybe everybody slept in, or maybe someone plus time on this one here, because some of these other waves are pretty tight together. A little bit less, a little bit more time has passed on this wave here, or they're just marching extra armies. It's hard to say without pulling more intel. Now going on to the next one, we're looking at metallic. Everybody knows who these guys are. If it's the guys I think they are, yeah, it is. Golden Eyelashes, the Monarch. So this is the metallic crew versus Recruiting Few. Metallic obviously took this war a few provinces down, and you can see that in the war itself. I mean, it looks like they're trying to do some kind of chain action here, but that's quickly breaking down, and red is slowly pulling away. So this war, is pretty obvious who's going to win here. We can take a look at the land side of things and see what they're actually doing. This war is over. But yeah, I mean, you see there was never any convergence on the waves here. In my mind, Metallic really never had a chance with the strategy they're trying to use here. to win this war. So that's it for the 3-day wars that were listed here on the target finder. There's definitely some exciting wars going on in the 2-day and 1-day range. Is there any wars that you guys see on the screen here that you want to take a quick look at? I'm just going to quickly go down the list here and see if I recognize any names of any of the kingdoms. So there's themeless. Take a quick look at the themeless war. Let's see if anybody else is. That's probably Checkmate, Romania. I'm kind of interested to see who these guys are. Lego and 1-1. That's it's a ghetto war. Pain Train. I've heard of those guys before. Let's take a look at that quickly. Shipwreck. Never heard of them. Dyslexic. No. Chaos. Oh, there's Chaos and Monsters at the end. So just take a quick look at their wars here. We're going to go down to. It looks like it did it in different order this time. We'll take a look at the themeless war. Down 1 player on themeless. Oof. Okay, I mean, look at this net worth. It doesn't even look like themeless is really trying here. I mean, they're just giving this war away to random theme. It's one thing being short a player, but I mean, look at this. I mean, this is just a total farm out. It's pretty obvious who's going to win this war. Let's just go on to the next one here. Okay, so we got, what are you looking at versus Checkmate? Okay, this is a lot better. This is a nice, little bit of a tighter war. You can tell Checkmate's doing a good job controlling the enemy here. They did start on top. There was a convergence here at the very beginning on the first wave, but it seems like all their subsequent waves have been good enough to keep red down. And again, Checkmate is up 1 province, so it could very well just be that 1 province extra contribution that's winning them this war. But as you can see, the land exchange is pretty tight as well. So I mean, it's not like there's any kind of farm out. Both sides are clearly fighting pretty hard in this war. We can look at honor here. I mean, there's not going to be too much movement because there isn't much honor to begin with. But as you can see, it's pretty stable, almost in line with net worth in terms of when the chains are happening and what's going on here. Moving on to the next one. Looks like Romania versus Unnamed Kingdoms. I think Romania is probably somebody. I'm just not sure who it is right now. Just doing a quick look at their land. Wow, this is a total, Romania is just giving the land away here. Let's look at the net worth chart. Yeah, again, this looks like Romania is probably going to lose this war. Looking at the honor chart, they're doing a good job probably with their ops, but ops aren't doing anything for you in an out of protection war to win a war. So I mean, they definitely play a part, but it's not going to win them this war. So if that's what they think is going to win the war, probably a good time to look at a new strategy or possibly getting prepared to withdraw. Pain Train. It looks like in terms.
I'm gonna step in here and say that it's not really a simple determine if it's a complete wipeout, because generally a lot of the top kingdoms like to what we call sandbag, and we're not gonna go full out to blow someone out of the water in an out of protection war. So generally when we see a large win, it is likely someone not very experienced.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I know you like to use that term sandbagging a lot, and I actually like to use it a lot now too. Yeah, that's entirely true. And it goes back to, what CHEETZY was saying about, deep chains or heavy chains being, not exactly what you want to do in an out of protection war. You're basically just looking to disable the enemy. When SAP says sandbag, I just, I always come to mind like, playing baseball and the coach throws the ball and the player hits the ball right at the coach's crotch, right back at him, just boom, sandbag him right out of the game. So anyway, that's, it's not easy to tell what's going on in a war. As I said, you definitely need some back end intel to corroborate some of the things that are going on in the target finder. However, the target finder does give you some interesting insight as to what is going on in the war if you're not playing or you don't have access to intel. But
yeah, I mean, just quickly, just looking at like some of these screens you've gone through, I'm quite interested in the fact that there seems to be a lot of dwarfs being chained out of all of these. Do you know what I mean? You
Yeah.
generally think of attacking provinces as orcs and deads and avians. There seems to be quite a net worth drop on dwarf provinces in particular.
Yeah, and I think people are worried about that extra production as well as their BE is a big thing because, that's the backbone of their economy probably, or what is perceived to be by the enemy anyway. So, dwarves are one of those tanky provinces generally that, if you don't pay attention to them enough or let them get away, they can become a real problem for you at the top. So maybe people are just looking at the orcs and undeads like the heavy attackers and saying, well, you know what, their defense is so low. Let's take out an economy-based province as opposed to an offense-based province. Because I mean, the orcs can continue to hit, but they'll still continue to lose their defense at home. Undeads have a lot more sustain in that regards because of their natural abilities. Um, But I tend to leave attackers alone who have a much lower at-home defense because those ones are just saved for cleaning up at the end, or if one of my attackers has a low offense number, I reserve those low defense targets within range for them generally to focus on, just so they can keep acres flowing and damage going. Um, as opposed to dumping them on a chain that maybe, the first 5 attackers in the net worth range hit already. Because again, chains aren't very good per se in out of protection wars. Like I've seen people lose wars because they chained too deeply. You spend 1 or 2 waves focusing on a single province, you've pretty much lost the war, especially if the enemy has taken out 2 or 3 of yours in that time. That's a pretty good indicator that you're doing something wrong and that it's only going to get worse for you as time goes on.
I think Spouse would concur with me on this one. Chaining is an old man strategy that doesn't work anymore.
Absolutely. And that was the original, that was the original play for so long. I mean, back in the 70s and 60s, that's how I was trained by my monarch at the time to lead wars or to run the TM crew. Was to focus heavily on that chaining, ops in association with that, Night Strike, Fireballs, Nightmare when it was available, and of course your duration ops. But the focus was on essentially who could chain the most provinces the fastest, and that would generally be your determinant factor of war. And of course, who could cow the most TMs at the top to be unbreakables. And then, of course, if you can get your hybrids and attackers up there into that safe zone so they can turtle, then you're on a good track to win that war for sure. Now, if we just look at the get a job versus Chaos Never Ending. Chaos Never Ending usually puts up a good fight. So it's no surprise here they're winning this war, especially up 1 player. If we look at the land, it looks like they had a really successful opening to their war. They really did a ton of land damage, but obviously that was taken back pretty quickly by Get a Job, though I don't think Get a Job can maintain their current course. Because just taking a quick look at what's going on here in terms of the net worth change, there are a couple provinces that are low on acres. Chaos Never Ending has 2 under 200, whereas it doesn't look like too much is going on in terms of a deep chain on the other side here. So I mean, this is actually an interesting war because Get a Job is definitely fighting back pretty hard. Looks like they're trying to disable a couple of the provinces on Chaos Never Ending to even out the war field. But it looks like they're coming up for a chain or another wave pretty soon, unless it just happened right here. Um, this is a pretty good indicator that Chaos Never Ending is probably going to take this war. But again, without seeing what their top offense, top defense provinces are like, looking at net worth and honor here, this is still a very tight war. I mean, it could probably go either way, but I mean, it's going to come down to whether or not, Get a Job can contend with the extra player that Chaos has, and at the end of the day, how much, acres is this orc and this dwarf actually bringing in? Obviously, they went after the fairy too. Maybe they're scared of the fairy's bloodlust. Maybe this guy was a hybrid attacker. But again, it's hard to say until we, unless we had all the data here. But again, this is, this could be a pretty tight war. I'm sure both sides are fighting pretty hard on this one. I think this might be this is the last one we were looking at here. On the Road Again versus Monsters. Monsters up 1. I know Monsters is another kingdom that likes to take wars all the time. They're generally the lower end of the player count, but they do have some skill and strategy behind what they're doing. I mean, they're a micro kingdom that takes wars sometimes against bigger opponents. But just looking at this, it looks like it was Monsters War going in, but they clearly lost some land headway after the first wave. But it seems to be pretty even going forward. If we look at the net worth here, I mean, they're doing a great job sticking to them. This is again a war that could probably go either way. Quick look at the honor. Seems like Monsters is probably doing more ops or focusing on honor heavy provinces. Again, with the way that the changes are, it gets harder and harder to look at these and say definitively what's going on. You really have to encompass everything as a whole. So definitely having that extra intel helps for sure. Kind of anything else that you guys wanted to go over? Did you guys have anything else you want to talk about in the meantime? I know we're getting close to the end of our show here, and I think Persian is going to have to leave soon. But is there anything, any final comments, anything you guys want to talk about with regards to out of protection wars or any of the wars we just looked at?
No, not from me.
I'm good as well.
All right, sounds good. So I'd like to say thanks to all our viewers out there who were tuned into this broadcast and all of our participants here who took their time out of their day to be part of this broadcast, and I hope it's all insightful for everybody. I am aware of the screen share presentation with regards to Google Meets maybe not showing the best visual image, so I'm going to see if I can enhance the brightness a little bit, and we'll work on that for future broadcasts. Thank you everybody for joining me today. It was a pleasure. I'll probably be doing a quick segment tonight, just looking at some of the wars currently in progress, maybe some of the newer wars, less than 2 days old. If anyone wants to join me at that time to do that, you're more than welcome. However, I will likely be proceeding with that solo, just to do a quick broadcast, less than 30 minutes or even less than that, just a quick war review, sort of like a newspaper update. But other than that, I want to thank everybody for joining. So thank you so much for your time today, Saps, Smiles, Persian Cat, and CHEETZY, of course. All of your input is very valuable. And so thank you again to everyone in the community. Thank you to Muga for supporting us during these broadcasts and helping us set up everything that we need to. There's going to be some exciting stuff released this weekend. Specifically, the Utopia news page is going to have once I get some stories posted, I'm definitely going to be sharing that and promoting that a lot more. It's definitely something everyone can look at and get a lot of useful information from. So thank you so much for joining me today, guys. This is Win signing off for Utopia News Warcast. Thank you so much, and I hope everybody